Pre-Flight Gamble, March 9th, 2023, Reno, Nevada, USA. It was a fast-boarding flight. It had none of those oblivious passengers clogging the aisle by first putting their carry-on in the overhead bin and then slowly removing 6 articles of clothing and stuffing them next to their bag. A few stragglers walked on board, and the flight attendants nervously began closing bins and counting bodies. Their spokesman announced on the overhead speakers that everyone should take their seat. It would be a completely full flight, and they were planning on an on-time departure by 10:15 a.m. As 10:15 approached, flight attendants hurried up and down the aisle as if they were looking for fires which had spontaneously combusted around the cabin. Eventually, their team huddled near the front of the plane. Someone new appeared. His brightly colored vest indicated he was from the ground crew. He joined the flight attendant huddle. Most passenger eyeballs nervously monitored what was happening near the cockpit. Something was obviously wrong. Was it major or minor? The 10:15 departure time arrived, and the huddle continued. Passengers mentally prepared for the worst. Some were already using their phones to check on alternate flights. The spokesperson for the flight attendants finally grabbed the microphone again. She had worked 20 years with the airline and seen every possible scenario. She spoke with a voice free of emotion. "We sincerely apologize for the delay. I'm afraid we have some weight and balance issues that need to be resolved before we can leave. I need 5 volunteers who can take a later flight this evening. That flight will leave at 8 p.m. The flight attendant paused for several seconds before adding, "As compensation, we can offer you an $800 Visa gift card. Any volunteers, please ring your overhead call button." None of the passengers reacted. "If your travel plans are flexible, this gift card will be a nice gift to yourself, and the Reno airport has many fine restaurants while you're waiting. Not a bad place to spend an afternoon." The seated audience on the plane acted as if they had not heard her. "Come on, folks. I need those 5 volunteers, or we can't push off from the gate. All you have to do is ring that call button, and we'll make all the arrangements." Passengers glanced back and forth at each other, wondering who might take the offer. Some wondered if they could be forcibly removed by the airline and how the selection process might work. Would they be randomly chosen? Would the flight attendants look for those who weighed the most? "Please, help us out today. If you can be flexible, we would truly appreciate it," the flight attendant continued. Most everyone on board thought about their upcoming plans for the day and how much they were worth. The flight attendant's voice returned. "All right, I've been authorized to offer $1,000 Visa gift cards to anyone willing to take that later flight. Please, let's get some volunteers." A family of 4 in row 22 stood up. The father raised his hand. The flight attendant spokesman waved him forward. The family seemed to shuffle in slow motion after gathering together backpacks, pillows, and food containers. As the parents and 2 young kids paraded down the aisle, many of their fellow passengers smiled in silent relief. The family represented 4 out of the 5 necessary volunteers. Only 1 more, and the flight could leave. While most of the flyers viewed the family as heroes, a small minority saw them as naive sellouts. The airline had barely started to negotiate. They would obviously go higher than $1,000 if needed. But now, 4 out of 5 opportunities for a big score were lost. Seat 13F was one of the disgusted onlookers. He was leaving Reno after a cold streak. He stopped in town for sales calls a few times a year and was usually pretty disciplined when playing the slot machines. He knew the house always won, but he liked the entertainment value. There was nothing like the thrill of winning a big pot. He had not seen any of that during this trip, but a high-dollar Visa gift card would take away some of the disappointment. Seat 17C felt the same way. She had a friend in Reno and liked to pop over to the casinos for a little blackjack. She could usually hold her own, but not this time. She was in no hurry to get home, and a Visa card score would help her forget some recent mistakes. The volunteer family disappeared down the sky bridge, and the flight attendant returned to her microphone. All we need is one more person and we can be on our way. One more $1,000 Visa card ready to go to someone. Just ring that call button. 13F and 17C watched carefully for movement. No one reached for their call button or appeared interested in the deal. The two gamblers knew they should not smile, but the situation seemed right for sweetening the pot. After a full minute of waiting, the flight attendant was back on the microphone. All right, I've been authorized to offer $1,200 to any volunteer. 13F shifted in his seat so he could better see his competition around the cabin. No one moved or seemed to pay attention. This was good. Only one more person, the flight attendant repeated over the loudspeaker. When she realized no one was listening, she said, Okay, let's go up to $1,500. Anyone for $1,500 for spending a few extra hours in Reno? 17C's hand almost moved involuntarily. She had to remind herself that the pot would get bigger. She should not stupidly jump too soon. If she stuck with it, it was easy money. But her fingers were itchy. The same thing was happening to the fingers of 13F. It was the kind of feeling they got before asking for another card at the blackjack table or tapping the spin button on the slot machine. It'll run up to $2,000, 13F told himself. You've got to stay cool until then. As the flight attendant appealed for anyone to take the $1,500 offer, 17C noticed the growing impatience among the flight crew. They were eager to get going. The offer would quickly get up to $2,000, and then she would jump. It would happen soon enough. She raised her hand up to her shoulder so she would be first to her call button when the announcement was made. All right, folks, I'm going to $1,800. Who will take $1,800 for a few extra hours in Reno? 13F slightly flinched at the $1,800 offer. He caught the eye of 17C, and they instantly knew each other's thoughts. They were both holding out for $2,000, but should they go for $1,800 and guarantee they get something? There was only one spot left. Fastest to the draw was the winner. 13F and 17C began to sweat as the flight attendant repeated the $1,800 offer. Almost there. They were so close to beating the airline and all the other passengers. All they needed was to hear a 2 and hit their button first. Before she could leap up to $2,000, the flight attendant decided to make one last appeal at $1,800. As she did, passenger 9D decided to remove her excellent noise-canceling headphones to find out what the delay was all about. Please, all I need is one more person. A few hours in Reno. We'll get you on another flight. $1,800 in compensation. $1,800? Sure, I'll take it, 9D shouted from her seat. I've got nothing better to do. As 9D stood up, both 13F and 17C hit their call buttons. It was too late. Looks like we have a winner, the flight attendant called. She hurried toward 9D to help her with her carry-on bag. That's not fair, 13F and 17C angrily muttered to themselves. She can't just jump into the game that late. We didn't know she was playing. She should have been listening the whole time. Their hands dropped to their laps in disappointment. A few minutes later, the boarding door was closed and the plane pushed back from the gate. Most of the cabin breathed a collective sigh of relief. At least 2 passengers slumped in their seats. Their cold streaks continued. They needed to fly away from the game for a while. If you enjoyed this story, please rank it on the website 500ironicstories.com. Please subscribe on the website to get weekly updates as new stories are posted. And please share with friends using the convenient links available.